The Legend of Zarqa al-Yamama. Okay, let's dive straight into this explainer and uncover what is arguably one of the most enduring and, honestly, most tragic mysteries of ancient Arabia. It's a massive tale of incredible foresight, devastating betrayal, and the very heavy price of ignored wisdom.
So just think about this for a second. What if one woman could see an army marching from literally days away? Across the deserts of ancient Arabia, this one extraordinary legend has endured for centuries. It's the story of Zarqa al-Yamama, the woman whose vision became the greatest warning that absolutely no one believed. Imagine looking out over a sprawling landscape of rocky plateaus, ancient settlements, and distant caravans, and there's just a lone woman watching the horizon from a high hill. How did this single figure become a timeless symbol of both prophetic intuition and tragic silence?
To get a feel for the deserts of ancient Arabia, we have to transport ourselves back in time. Picture this sweeping landscape of shifting sands, rocky plateaus, and fierce tribal loyalties. Central Arabia, way before the dawn of Islam, was a breathtaking but incredibly harsh, unforgiving environment. Survival out there didn't depend on massive empires, right? It depended on intricate alliances and an ever-present awareness of your surroundings. A single mistake, or just one unseen threat, could literally mean the total annihilation of your community. To really grasp her story, we've got to understand the Jahiliyyah. This was the age of ignorance in pre-Islamic Arabia, right before the 7th century CE. It was an era completely dominated by strict tribal structures, deeply ingrained codes of hospitality, and frequent bloody feuds. In a society where resources like water and grazing lands were incredibly scarce, having early warning systems, specifically human sentinels and lookouts placed up on high vantage points, was an absolute matter of life and death.
Now, our story zeroes in on the reality of al-Yamama. This is right around the modern Riyadh region in Central Arabia. The Jadis tribe lived in this fertile agricultural hub, which was rich with lush oases and vital trade routes. But, as you can imagine, wealth in the desert attracts rivals. They lived alongside their kin and eventual rivals, the Tassam tribe. Under the constant threat of intertribal warfare, which was known as Ghazwa, the tension of living in an oasis surrounded by enemies meant the Jadis had to make sentinels their most valuable defense. They desperately needed someone who could see danger long before it actually arrived.
And into this highly volatile world steps Zarqa al-Yamama herself, the blue-eyed seeress. In a region where dark eyes were the absolute norm, her pale, piercing eyes were seen as a mark of something deeply unusual, maybe even otherworldly. She wasn't just a lookout, she was a protector. She was renowned for a gaze so incredibly sharp that people said she could spot a single white hair floating in a distant cup of milk.
So let's talk about the sheer extent of her vision. Her ability to perceive minute details close up, like spotting that fine white hair in milk, was astounding. But it was her distant vision that made her truly legendary. Traditional accounts claim she could spot enemy riders from a 3-day journey away. For a tribe completely surrounded by hostile forces, Zarqa essentially functioned as the ultimate early warning system. She could give her warriors days to prepare for an ambush.
But the real test, the moment that defined her legend, came with what's known as the Marching Forest. A rival force decided to launch a massive surprise attack. Led by the powerful king Hassan al-Himyari, who wanted to avenge members of the Tazwan tribe, an army marched north from Yemen. Knowing full well about Zarqa's legendary eyesight, the enemy commanders knew they couldn't just march openly across the desert. They needed a disguise. They had to become a marching forest.
Let's walk through this fateful attack, because the deception was brilliantly simple. Enemy soldiers cut down trees and used the branches as camouflage. From her vantage point, Zarqa spotted the impossible, a forest moving across the sand. She frantically warned her people, but in a fatal display of arrogance, the Jadis leaders completely dismissed her as delusional. They ignored the warning entirely, right up until the forest dropped its branches and a devastating surprise assault began.
And that brings us to the tragic fall of the Jadis. Because they completely refused to listen, the tribe was caught totally off guard and nearly annihilated. It was a brutal massacre that quite literally wiped the tribe from the map, leaving them as one of the so-called extinct tribes of ancient Arabia. Zarqa herself was captured by the victorious army. The enemy king was simultaneously fascinated and terrified by her abilities, and he ordered a brutal retribution for what he perceived as dangerous sorcery.
Then there's the gruesome aftermath involving the black veins of al-Athmad. To discover the secret of her sight, her eyes were gouged out before she was crucified. And according to the legend, the soldiers found that the veins of her eyes were stained entirely black. This was attributed to her heavy use of al-Athmad, which is a type of ancient coal that Arabs believed greatly enhanced vision. It's a dark, terrible end to her physical life, but it was the exact moment her enduring myth was born.
So this all brings up a massive question. Fact or legend? How much of this dramatic story is historical reality, and how much is literary legend? Did a woman with superhuman sight actually see trees walking? Or are we looking at a story that's been shaped, exaggerated, and mythologized by centuries of oral tradition around campfires and in royal courts? Well, to figure that out, we have to look at the linguistic root ZRQ, or Zerk. Studies show that this ancient Arabic root didn't originally mean the color blue. It actually meant luster or shine. In pre-Islamic Arabia, twinkling or pale, shimmery eyes were highly stigmatized. They were overwhelmingly associated with bad omens, deceit, and enemies. This perfectly explains why a physical anomaly, like a woman with uniquely colored or shiny eyes, could so easily be transformed into a tale of supernatural foresight. When we're separating myth from reality here, it's like looking at two different worlds. Historians debate her exact historical footprint all the time. On the left side, we have the literary legend, magical vision in moving trees, which, by the way, strikingly mirrors Shakespeare's Macbeth centuries later. But on the right side, the historical reality suggests the story of Zarqa likely symbolizes a real woman, or maybe a lineage of female advisors, whose keen military intuition was just mythologized over time. She represents the very real human intuition that was required to navigate those deadly, shifting tribal alliances.
But here's where it gets really cool. We are actively unearthing al-Yamama today, and modern archaeology is grounding these legends in reality. Recent surveys by the Saudi Heritage Commission have discovered 337 new archaeological sites in the area. We're finding stone tool manufacturing areas, ancient water facilities like wells and dams, and these massive circular stone structures. This absolutely proves that al-Yamama wasn't just empty desert. It was a heavily populated and fiercely contested region. The stakes were incredibly high, making the role of a lookout like Zarqa absolutely critical.
Because of all this, Zarqa evolved into the ultimate archetype of ignored wisdom. She went from being a historical curiosity to a timeless, Cassandra-like symbol. Her story resonates deeply because it reflects a really universal human failing, the tendency of those in power, often within patriarchal structures, to completely silence or dismiss the intuitive prophetic warnings of women, much to their own ultimate detriment.
Even in classical pre-Islamic poetry, she was totally revered. The great poet al-Nabiga al-Dubiani literally called her Fatatu al-Hay, the insightful maiden of the neighborhood. She was celebrated for her keen observation, which cemented her place in early Arabic literary traditions not as some sort of witch, but as a paragon of vital, albeit ignored, wisdom. Her legacy is so deep that more perceptive than Zarqa al-Yamama actually became a proverb. To this very day, that Arabic idiom is used to describe someone with exceptional foresight. It's a linguistic testament to a woman who saw what others could not, or simply would not see.
Fast forward a bit to 1969 with the poem Crying in the Arms of Zarqa al-Yamama by Amal Dunkel. During times of intense political crises, especially following the devastating 1967 war, modern poets invoked her name to articulate collective grief. Dunkel used her archetype to channel the frustration of unheeded political warnings, showcasing the catastrophic results when leaders ignore obvious imminent threats.
She truly has a resonant modern legacy. Her story absolutely refuses to stay in the past. Today, she's a symbol of national warning in Palestinian and Egyptian poetry, a clairvoyant protector in Iraqi fiction, and scholars even analyze her as a decolonizing feminist archetype, kind of similar to the curandera healers in Mexican-American culture. And in 2024, her epic story was even brought to life on stage as Saudi Arabia's very first grand opera.
At the end of the day, this is really about the tragedy of unheeded truth. Whether she was a real woman from the Jaidi's tribe, a purely literary creation, or a blend of both, her story serves as a powerful mirror reflecting the fatal consequences of arrogance. The tragedy isn't just that she died or that her tribe was wiped out. The true tragedy is that they had the truth handed to them on a silver platter, and they chose to laugh at it instead of acting on it.
Because, as we've seen, the greatest danger is not failing to see the truth, but refusing to believe those who do. Zarqa al-Yamama stands as a permanent sentinel on the horizon of history. And it really makes you wonder, as we look at the looming threats of our own modern world, who are the sentinels we are choosing to ignore today?